A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and welcome to one of the cooler areas of Johannesburg to hang out. This is Great Domains, my good friend Derek Kilpin, who runs a hugely dodgy operation, smuggling in all sorts of wonderful wine and selling it at ridiculous prices and having an enormous amount of fun doing it. But he doesn't just do international wine, he's also got a great collection of South African wines, very bespoke, very hand-picked. It's not a massive range, but some really cool South African brands. Some of them, though, do have a bit of an international flavour, and that is exactly what we have today, because although the wine is South African, made by a South African, the proprietor sits alongside of Tintin, Hercule Poirot, and Jean-Claude Van Damme as one of the most famous and influential Belgians ever. So it gives me great pleasure for the first time, JP, to welcome you to
Good morning, Dan.
Wine.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure.
Now tell me, how does a Belgian find his way to making bubbles in Franschhoek?
Well, by the biggest luck that deciding one day in 2001 that and having 5 children and having done a good business, 10 years running his own business in Belgium, deciding that it was time for a change and finding the best place in the world to move to, and found that beautiful valley of Franschhoek. That's where he decided to immigrate. And then looking around, having a passion already for Champagne and Burgundy wines, and looking around South Africa, discovering the Cap Classique. Was still very early days of Cap Classique, and meeting the nicest people those days making Cap Classique, which were Jeff Gray, Jan Maran, especially Peter Ferreira, and meeting those guys and being inspired and deciding eventually that there was no yet a dedicated family winery in South Africa making exclusively Cap Classique as per the Champenois model. So that's how in 2005, eventually we built in Franschhoek the very first family winery producing exclusively Cap Classique, which now has got a capacity of about 60,000 bottles a year.
So it's more than understandable to want to move to Franschhoek because it's a beautiful part of the world, and the love of Cap Classique that most South Africans have makes it a natural choice. What about your own link to wine? Because if I think of Belgium, I'm thinking Mulfried and liters of beer made by monks, not necessarily wine.
Yes, but also remember that somehow where I used to live is only 2 hours away from the Champagne region. The world is small in Europe, and most people don't know that actually the biggest consumer per capita of Champagne is not the French, but the Belgian.
Really?
Yes, that's in our culture. So yes, surprisingly, yes, we number one.
You only drank beer.
No, pretty much yes.
All right.
Beer and champagne.
So you've got history. You're next door to France. You decide to move to Franschhoek. The estate got up and running. How do you then find yourself in the company of this particular gentleman who's got a bit of a reputation as a rock star with bubbles?
When I started in 2006, I didn't know what was happening around Cape Town, but Paul was a math teacher those days, and Paul suddenly had an early midlife crisis and decided that although he loved teaching math, he would follow his passion first, which was wine and especially Babi. And that's how Paul went back to school to study enology at Stellenbosch University. And in 2008, Paul did his first internships and blending sessions with Peter Ferreira and myself at Colmant. And that's when we became friends. Now, Paul lived his life, was for 8 years cellar master in another bubbly winery, but eventually, just over 2 years ago, we decided to really leave our passion together and reunite forces to produce, really to become the top boutique Cap Classique producer in South Africa. And since then, we've been over 2 years together. It's been a fantastic journey together.
Paul, recount for us, if you will, Mr. Herbert, both your journey of I really can't stand teaching kids maths anymore, so I'm going to make wine and I can drink it all day, but also your first encounters with this Belgian import and how that friendship sparked.
Yeah, so I suppose the early history of teaching. I love teaching. I love the kids. I hope they say the same things about me when they see me today. But yeah, I wanted to do something more with math and chemistry. And so, like Jean-Philippe said, I'd already, when I was teaching, done a BSc in math and chemistry through UNISA. So, and then my mother-in-law to be was tired of me ordering bad wine, so she sent me on a wine course. And yeah, I discovered wine, math, and chemistry fit together, and then I discovered Cap Classique and Champagne, and it's super geeky. It fits who I am. I love the geeky side of winemaking. So yeah. And then it was just this amazing thirst to to taste as much as I could, but also to learn as much as I could. And Jean-Philippe came across my path. My wife and I went to taste at Colmant, and I never forget that first tasting. In fact, every day when I walk into the office, I walk past the spot where I sat and tasted then. It was incredible, this kind of surreal feeling. And chatted to Jean-Philippe and was invited to the blending. And just mesmerized from the beginning, how the components fit together, and we struck up a friendship. We've always shared ideas, and we think the same way. That's why it works. We have different ways of getting there, which I think works us nicely together. But
it's clearly become a terrific friendship, and it manifests itself in bubbles I've had a lot of. And of course, we've had you on Dan Really Likes Wine before.
Yes.
And thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I'm more than happy to be with you again, this time in person. We've got a selection to taste, so let's kick that off. What are we tasting first up? And give us our introduction.
So the first one we're going to taste is our Brut Reserve. That's the house blend, and very classic of the house style. The house style that we're looking for at Colmant is a perpetuation of what Jean-Philippe started, but we're looking for finesse, elegance in the wines. The wines need to enchant you. They need to draw you into the glass. Fantastic Chennons and Cinsault and Grenache that we had and that we have in South Africa pour out their aromas out of the glass. But we feel with Cap Classique, the wines need to draw you in, and that kind of finesse and elegance on the palate is what we're looking for. So Brut Reserve blend, 52% Pinot Noir, 48% Chardonnay, but nice crisp, but nice full texture also from the Pinot Noir.
All right. Well, it's spoken of in wonderful terms. Let's see if it drinks in wonderful terms. Here is our first wine of the day. One of the things I'm always interested in with this style is that, particularly with the Cap Classique, and I think it's inspired by the understanding we have of the big champagne houses, Amut, Umum, etc., is that people expect to get the same thing time after time after time. Is that what you're aiming for? And if so, is that a particular challenge to make sure that 2011 versus 2016, although they're not an actual vintage, that each year you're bringing out something that still strikes those same chords?
Jean-Philippe, you want to answer this?
I think it's the strength of a boutique producer. I mean, we're dedicated to keep our supporters and our bubbly drinkers happy with a house style that's consistent in style and quality. But the excitement is that not every single bottle is the same. We're not McDonald's or Coca-Cola. We're Colmant. There's an excitement. Every bottle's got a story, it's got a vintage and behind it.
What about the comparison between Champagne and Cap Classique, Paul, in terms of how we benchmark ourselves? I know a lot of the guys in the Hemel Valley are quietly but firmly desisting the constant, it is the Burgundy of South Africa, and want to say, actually, we are the Hemel Valley and we work on our own terms. We celebrate 50 years of Cap Classique now in South Africa. Are we at a space where the constant champagne comparison is no longer quite so relevant?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, and Jean-Philippe made a joke about it last night, but when you say Champagne, I think Les Menil-sur-Oger, it's my favorite village. I've been lucky enough to work there for the last 12 years each year. I think what we should be doing with Cap Classique, as a proudly South African product, serve it alongside Champagne. I don't think it's one or the other. One of our greatest opportunities is on a Friday evening. We often get a bottle together, the families go across to maybe the stoop on the other side and open a bottle of Colmant, another bottle of Cap Classique alongside a Champagne, and celebrate the differences in terroir, but also the key characteristics, finesse, elegance, length, balance in the wine should be in both wines. So those characteristics need to be there, but I think we can confidently serve it alongside, and it shouldn't have to be one or the other.
Well, let's take those very characteristics and move them into glass number 2. What is our follow-up here?
So the follow-up wine is a real passion project for us. It's a Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. For us at Colmant, it's Chardonnay is probably she's the most elegant grape to make bottle fermented sparkling wine from. The ageability that the grape has, the poise and elegance that it carries on the palate is really exciting to work with. And This wine is aged for nearly 48 months, and then we degorge and we put it onto cork for almost a year before it goes to market. So you have this rich tertiary development in flavor, nice fruit, but still the kind of poison elegance on the palate.
That is a lot of patience, JP.
Yes, it's. I mean, the current release, obviously, of this Blanc de Blanc was from Harvest 2016. It's lots of patience, and the patient is not only just to set it, but to see the result, the excitement. I mean, it's waiting all that time to see the results after years and years, and it's still going to keep on improving. So it's really exciting, but lots of patience. I agree.
It also speaks to a space where I think as South Africans we need to be a little more aware and a little more, patience is the word, but understanding that vintage Cap Classique is something that deserves a bit of time, deserves a bit of reward. And I think that speaks to our third wine, if I'm not mistaken, something that's had a bit more time, and we're able to chart that journey from where it began to what it has become today.
Yes, so it's a fantastic opportunity to talk about the ageability, especially of white wine, bottle fermented white wine in South Africa. So we have a 2007 for us to taste, and it's the second vintage of Jean-Philippe. So really in the formative years of the cellar. But you can see the wine taking on the character and the philosophy of the house. And the crispness and the freshness of this wine is absolutely incredible. And you see the poise of the wine on the palate that allows us to see that South African white wines, Cap Classique, can age. If you think that this wine is nearly 14 years old, it's incredible.
All right, so we're heading back now 14 years. That's a long time in wine terms. Why the wait? What is it giving this particular Cap Classique that is saying to us, you know what, wait this amount of time, it's worth it?
Well, it's giving lots of things. This wine has been kept in our Vinotheque on the lease for 14 years, been degorged only 3 weeks ago. So first, before anything about the wine itself, it gives an emotion, because for me it was my second vintage, second harvest. So it gives a big emotion to drink this wine. And then it's the exceptional quality of the wine that shows. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, like we said, I think this one has a fantastic poise on the palate. I mean, look at the mousse persistence, the kind of texture of the bubble is there. And this is zero dosage, nothing is added to it. That you kind of have this pearlescence from the bubble on the palate, and the length of the wine. The tertiary development is there, so for the wine geeks, you have a little of that kind of toasted croissant and hazelnut flavors or aromas that are in the wine. But finesse, elegance, length, it's all there. This is not a wine that's commercially available, but we are introducing it with the next release of our Absolute that we're going to taste later, but also just to encourage South African wine consumers that Cap Classique, one, can age, and two, it ages beautifully and gracefully.
Oh, I think if we can put it into far more relevant terms, JP, if we look at this versus the one before, and there's a real sense of kind of control and balance and poise here. The other one maybe a little bit livelier. So you've basically got Eden Hazard versus Kevin De Bruyne. I think that would probably be your sense of comparison.
Yes, pretty much.
Oh, it is great. It's the kind of thing I love drinking, partly because it appeals to the wine geek in me and the sense of history that I love. You were a maths man. I was always an English and history student at school and university. And so being able to think back, where was I in 2007? What was I doing?
Yeah.
What was happening at the estate? In your case, back to your second vintage. So that sense excites me, but also just reminding people of Cap Classique in particular, the ageability and the reward of giving this wine some time is very clear.
Absolutely.
All right, well, with 3 done, it's a terrific collection. This is probably the best breakfast I've had since I had a bottle of Charlemagne with Michael Frijon for breakfast and didn't really remember lunch. So it's a perfect way to start off the day. We are 3 down. What have I got as number 4?
So number 4 is the release that we started showing to the wine world yesterday. It's the Absolute. It's coming from the 2013 vintage, and also zero dosage, so it's having no sugar added to it, just a slight touch of sulfur to protect the wine, but really just a drop. And this wine is normally released like 6 to 8 months after being on the cork, and we actually waited almost 13 months before we released it, just for that perfect moment where you have this seamless balance. And what we felt was there was always a texture on the side of the wine, and with time on the cork, it's built up this beautiful, almost like satin finish on the edge, and then this searing acidity down the middle that carries the wine.
And most important, it's a Blanc de Blanc.
Yeah.
It's pure Chardonnay, coming from 3 different valleys, from Elgin, Robertson, and Franschhoek.
Ah, right. So you've bought in a whole lot of different areas.
Yeah.
It offers opportunity. It also offers challenge. Talk through that balance.
Yeah, I think the challenge is often there are many good sites, but it's the relationship with the grower. So we always pick growers that that understand what we are trying to achieve, that share our vision, and are looking after the quality of the fruit. You can have the greatest fruit in the best vineyard, but if you don't take care of it back to the cellar, it's a difficult path. So that's an important part of the relationship. And I think all of us are looking for something sustainable. So we're looking for a practice with a farmer that is ethical, that 10 years from now we can still buy the same vineyard.
And it also speaks to the sense of partnership, which is so well illustrated with the two of you. You created a wine. It goes back, you mentioned 2013. Vintage, non-vintage, how does that work as a whole in Colmant? Do you have specific vintages? How does that work for you?
Every wine at Colmant are non-vintage. We are proudly non-vintage winery. We believe so in keeping reserve wine from all the previous vintages to blend in, to add not only consistency but complexity to our blends. All our reserve wines are kept in French oak barrels, and they're really the Colmant touch. It's what makes Colmant. So we are proudly non-vintage, all our wines.
I definitely agree. It's a big part of what makes Colmant. What also makes Colmant, though, is, of course, your fabulous winemaker. And I suspect that your time, JP, of being able to tell him what to do is coming to an end, because he might be Paul at the moment, but it's not going to be too long until you have to address him as Dr. Herber.
Yes, Paul is about, very proudly for all of us, Paul is about to become the very first doctor in bubbles in South Africa. He's completing now his PhD at the University of Stellenbosch. So we can't wait for having the first doctor in bubbles on the farm.
That's has Peter Ferreira not patented that title?
No, I think Peter Ferreira is still the godfather of bubbles. He's still the reference for us all in the industry. And JP jumps the gun slightly. I'm not sure if I've got an 18-month sabbatical to finish all the work, but yeah, we're getting there, and it's fantastic. I really think what's important about it is the sharing of knowledge between Stellenbosch University and France University in Champagne, and looking for ways to improve Cap Classique and to also put us on the world stage with Cap Classique.
I love the passion that you both clearly have for this varietal, and it manifests itself in some wonderful, wonderful wine. What I'd like to know before we wrap up here, you've created something really special, and the dedication to Cap Classique, especially in its 50th year, is to celebrate and celebrate greatly. What about going forward, though? There's clearly so much you've done already, but I suspect the two of you are the sort of pair who sit down fairly often and think, you know what I think we might be able to do next? So in as much as you can give away some trade secrets, what's on the horizon for Colmant?
There are quite a few projects, and I mean, going in the drawers and in the cellar. So we've got quite a few things going, but I can't tell much more now. But yes, the idea is really to keep on improving. I mean, joining our forces together was the best idea ever. We sharing the same passion. We know we want to be and to be recognized as #1 boutique producer of Cap Classique, but not just for us, for the whole Cap Classique industry and for South Africa.
Dr. Bubbles, if we sit down in 10 years' time, what are you telling me?
Yeah. What am I telling you? Maybe first to what Jean-Philippe was saying now, we have some exciting projects in the drawer, in the cellar. And I think what is also really important, this wine style loves attention to detail. It loves to be taken by the hand and kind of coerced or drawn into the future. So we're really working hard on that, to pay that attention to detail. 10 years from now, I'm probably telling you that I would like my son to pour these wines for your children one day. And I think that's a future that Jean-Philippe and I share, is to make wines that we can enjoy with you today, but in the future that our families can share the wines, that our children can share the wines with each other.
Well, I look forward to my kids doing exactly that, but then leaving the rest of them for me to finish off, which
Yes.
I'll be incredibly happy with. Guys, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for lovely, lovely wine, and thank you for a great story, because for me, it is the stories about South African wine that mean as much as the wine itself. We love sharing them on Dan Really Likes Wine, and you guys have got a fabulous, bubbly bromance going, and it's great to be able to celebrate it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
So there we go. JP and Dr. Bubbles, as he now officially has to be known. I think he's changing his ID document in September, bringing together a selection of the Colmant, Franschhoek, producing some absolutely exquisite Cap Classique. And 50 years on from that famous first bottle out at Siemensig, we can see in this little corner of Franschhoek something very special.